Okay, so I'm Jeff Grant, and I'm doing my thing on the 6 types of special leads that are used when you are writing a feature story. Okay, so this is the situation that I'm going to be using throughout this presentation. And so, a writing candidate by the name of Bugs Bunny has won the recent mayoral election in your small town. The election commission is currently meeting to discuss the implications of a town run by a fictional character, and in the event that said regime fails, how to do away with the public's number one choice and crown the runner-up, James Clark Maxwell, as mayor. So the first type is the anecdotal lead. So the main thing to remember is that this is basically a story lead, so use it only when a feature story has colorful characters to fill your narrative. It usually starts out with 3 paragraphs and then goes directly into a nut graph to actually show you what the story is about. So for anecdotal, this lead has a definable beginning, middle, and end. It is meant to slowly ease you into a topic through the people involved in it. And this is contrasted with narrative, which is in media res, which basically means you're dropped straight into the middle of the story. So an anecdotal example, James Clark Maxwell loves Bug Bunny as a child. The titular character of the show and his various hijinks are actually what inspired Maxwell to become a school teacher, so he too could enrich the lives of children. What he did was make me smile, Clark said. He inspired me to make other kids smile. I owe my entire career to him. Eventually, Maxwell realized enriching the lives of children was not enough, so he set out to help the community. Maxwell never once thought that Bugs Bunny would also be the one to end his career. Narrative example. Bugs Bunny, mayoral candidate James Clark Maxwell asked. The cartoon character? He beat me? His campaign team sat bewildered. No one could have ever expected what could best be described as the day statistics took a day off and let the writing candidate, Bugs Bunny, win. So the next type of lead is the contrast lead. And as you might expect, this is a lead that compares or contrasts 2 separate events or parts of a story. It often involves using turn words such as but, before, however, now. So an example, Bugs Bunny is known for bringing smiles to children all around the world, but mayoral candidate James Clark Maxwell is not smiling. So first we say the big thing, Bugs Bunny is known for bringing smiles to everyone. And then we contrast it with the fact that the mayor candidate, James Clark Maxwell, is not smiling. So that's that example. Also, the staccato lead. A staccato lead often throws context completely out the window. So what this means is that readers are introduced to the story through nothing more than a string of words with something connecting all of them. After this hook, it is the job of the writer to make clear what was actually being talked about in the lead through a nut graph. So an example, corruption, democracy led by jesters, childhood friends stabbing you in the back, the first fictional mayor. All these and more are words that could conceivably be going through current mayoral candidate and lifelong Looney Tunes enthusiast James Clark Maxwell after his stunning defeat at the hands of writing candidate Bugs Bunny. So here's the quote lead. So here's a quote that I'm going to start with. Have you ever observed that we pay much more attention to a wise passage when it is quoted than when we read it in the original author? Is a quote by Philip Gilbert Hamerton and is also completely false when we're talking about the beginning of a news story or feature story. So as a rule, don't use quotation leads because they're neither interesting nor all-encompassing enough to actually introduce readers to a story. If they actually are, if they're interesting and all-encompassing, then use them. Though it might be better to paraphrase the quote so you can actually tailor it to an opening. So here's a quote lead example, which is basically the same as my narrative lead example because they're both quotes, so yay. Bugs Bunny, mayoral candidate James Clark Maxwell asked. The cartoon character, he beat me? Okay, next one. Next is the question lead. So again, there aren't any lead types which are absolutely disallowed except maybe boring ones, because nobody likes those. But question leads are generally frowned upon. So don't use this type unless you can make an especially interesting or crafty lead question. Once the question is asked, it is the job of the nut graph to answer that question. So a question lead example, have you ever heard of a puppet regime? Whether or not you have, a plurality of the citizens of Danville have decided to go one step further and elect Bugs Bunny, the cartoon character, as their new mayor. So as you see, it's starting out with a question. Yeah. And the last one is the direct address lead. So, news stories often focus almost exclusively, you might say, on the third person. So, a few examples. President Obama delivered a speech today. The citizens of China's capital, Beijing, have been staging a massive protest in Tiananmen Square for the past few weeks. So both of these are focusing on a third person. So the first one, President Obama. The second one, the citizens of China's capital, Beijing. They're not talking to the reader, and they're not very personal. And that's generally because they're hard news stories rather than feature stories. So if you find that boring, you want to switch it up and make something different, you can use this type of lead to instead focus on the reader by directly talking to them. So a direct address lead, which also doubles as a question lead. So have you ever heard of a puppet regime? Whether or not you have, a plurality of the citizens of Danville have decided to go one step further and elect Bugs Bunny as their new mayor. So yeah, this is the same lead that was used for the question lead, but it's also a direct address lead. And generally, question leads are best when they're also doubling as direct address leads. So if you have to use a question lead, then it should also be a direct address lead, because then you can at least make it more personal for the reader and all that. So yeah, those are the 6 types of special leads that are used in feature stories. Thanks.